I've always had a goal to hit 1,000 likes on a video, but you legends smashed past that and got one of my videos to over 2K likes. Let's break even more records on this video. Please smash that like button. And I want to try this one thing. I want to know who my devoted listeners are. So once you've done that, comment down below that you hit that like button hard, or even a kind message. Let's see who our loyal devoted viewers are. You know who you are. Once again, thank you guys so much. Now to these amazing stories. So, I matched with this guy on Tinder on a random Tuesday night. His profile is just normal enough to feel safe, but weird enough to be interesting. He had this blurry photo of him holding a chicken, like an actual chicken, not food. A picture of him standing next to a giant pumpkin, and then one that looked like it was taken at a gas station bathroom. I don't know why I swiped right, probably because I was bored, and he didn't look like every other gym selfie and fishing photo guy. We talked for like 3 days, mostly about weird food combinations and how he once accidentally ordered cow tongue thinking it was steak. He seems funny, kind of awkward, but in a way that feels harmless. Eventually he says we should meet up, and I'm like, sure, why not? He suggests this diner that's open late, the kind with sticky tables and a menu that has way too many options. When I get there, he's already in a booth, waving at me like we've been friends for years. He looks exactly like his photos, which is good, but also he has this twitchy energy like he just drank 3 coffees. I slide in across from him, and we're making small talk about the menu, me trying to figure out if I want pancakes or a burger, when I notice him looking over my shoulder, not just glancing, full on staring past me like something's about to happen. Before I can even turn around, someone slides into the booth next to him. I squeal. I thought it was a waiter at first, but nope, it's a woman. She's got these bright red nails, messy eyeliner, and this smirk that's somewhere between amused and annoyed. He doesn't introduce her right away, just kind of leans back like he's waiting for me to react. Then he says, super casually, that this is his ex. And apparently, get this, he thought it would be good for us to meet. I just sit there blinking because my brain's still trying to catch up. It's not like they ran into each other here. She has a menu in her hand. She's clearly been invited, and she's looking at me like I'm an audition. She starts asking me questions, not fun ones. Things like what kind of car I drive, how many people I've dated if I live alone. All in this tone like she's filling out some invisible checklist. Meanwhile, he's just sipping his Coke, grinning like this is all going according to some amazing plan. It's so uncomfortable that I just start over-explaining everything. Like, she asks where I work, and I tell her not just the company, but what floor, who my boss is, how long my commute is. I can hear myself doing it, and I want to stop, but it's like my brain has been hijacked by this weird interrogation energy. The waiter comes to take our order, and she tells him she'll have exactly what I'm having. Doesn't even look at the menu. And then she laughs to herself like it's some inside joke I'm not in on. He laughs too. I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, maybe they're still into each other and this is some power move I'm not cool enough to understand. Halfway through the meal, she starts telling me these really specific stories about him. Not cute relationship stories, like deeply personal, kind of messed up ones. Stuff about his family, stuff about nights he cried, mistakes he made, all while he's just nodding along like it's a podcast he's enjoying. And it's all framed like, just so you know what you're getting into. And she leans forward and says she still has a key to his apartment. Says it like she's proud of it. Says it like it's still her place. And then he just shrugs and says, yeah, she comes over sometimes to feed my cat. I don't even know if he has a cat. I try to change the subject to literally anything else, whether TV shows, whatever, but they keep circling back to their history, their fights, their inside jokes. At one point, she's showing me a scar on her hand from when she accidentally cut herself while cooking at his place, and then they're arguing about what year it happened. It's like I'm trapped in this couple's weird nostalgia hour, except they're not together, they're also clearly still together in some way I can't define. I check my phone for the time and realize only 25 minutes have passed since I sat down. It feels like a year. The whole diner feels smaller now, like everyone can tell this is not a normal situation. Even the waiter starts refilling my water without making eye contact. Then she starts asking me how I'd handle him getting angry. Not if. When. And she phrases it like a genuine curiosity, like she's passing on advice to the next person in line. I laugh nervously because I don't know what else to do. He just keeps smiling at me like, see, aren't you glad you met her? The food comes and I take 2 bites before I realize I can't actually eat. My stomach feels like it's folded in half. She's eating my exact order, just slowly, like she's savoring every bite while watching me. I notice her nails are chipped, and there's a smear of mascara under one eye, like she cried earlier. I start wondering if they fought right before I got here. At one point, she reaches across him to grab my fork, like actually uses my fork to take a piece of my pancake, and then hands it back. Doesn't wipe it. Doesn't apologize, just goes right back to eating her own food. I start plotting my exit. I tell her I have to get up early, even though it's a Saturday and I already said earlier I had nothing planned. Neither of them argues. He says he'll walk me in my car, but she says she'll do it instead, and for some reason he lets her. So I'm outside in the parking lot, under those buzzing yellow lights, with his ex walking 2 steps behind me. She stops me before I reach my car and tells me I seem nice, but I should think twice before getting too close. Says it in this calm, almost friendly tone, like she's giving me baking tips. Then she just turns around and walks back toward the diner without looking back. I get in my car, lock the doors, and drive off. I don't even look to see if they're watching me leave. I deleted his number before I got home. I don't even know where to start with this one, because it went from normal to absolute chaos in like 8 seconds. So I matched with this girl Louise up on Tinder. She's got this artsy vibe in her photos, all soft lighting, thrift store jackets, random shots of old buildings with peeling paint. Her bio's just one line. I like people who notice details. I think that's kind of cool, so we start talking. The conversation's actually easy. She's into old records, mismatched furniture, and swears she can tell everything about a person from the shoes they wear. I'm thinking, all right, she's a little eccentric, but not in a bad way. She suggests meeting at this weird little cocktail bar in an old laundromat building. The kind of place where the drinks have names that sound like indie band albums and everything smells faintly like burnt orange peel. I get there early because I'm a chronic what if there's no parking person. She walks in exactly on time. Tall, messy hair, wearing this oversized jacket that looks like it's survived multiple decades. And yeah, the earrings. They're these dangling silver things shaped like low cages with tiny fake pearls inside. They're the kind of earrings that look like they have a story. We sit in this corner booth under a flickering neon sign. Music's low, people talking in that muffled way where you can't make out words, just noise. I figure I'll start off with something easy, so I tell her I like her earrings. Just a normal, harmless compliment. The reaction is instant. She doesn't say thanks, doesn't even smile. She grabs her drink, some bright red thing with crushed ice, and throws it straight into my lap. The ice hits first, and the cold soaks through my jeans, and the whole blast slams down on the table so hard it rattles. She's staring at me with this wild-eyed look, and before I can even process what just happened, she's yelling. Not super loud, but in that way where everyone nearby goes quiet because they know something's going down. She's saying I'm just like all the others. Over and over, like I've been put in some category I didn't even know existed. My brain's scrambling to figure out what I did. I'm sitting there dripping red drink onto the seat, trying to mentally rewind to figure out how nice earrings translated to I'm the worst person alive. She starts listing things I've never done, telling me how guys like me always use the same lines, how earrings are just the bait and I'm the predator. I'm frozen because I honestly have no idea what she's talking about, but she's so locked in, so convinced, that I can't even get a word in. The bartender comes over, probably to see if they need to kick someone out, and she just waves him off without breaking eye contact with me. I'm not allowed to leave yet. I notice people at the next table staring, but they're not stepping in. They're in that let's just watch and see how weird this gets mode. I try this half smile thing, hoping it'll calm her down, but it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. She leans in so close I can smell her perfume, that dusty old book kind of smell, and she tells me she knows my type. She says my type always starts with noticing something small, then tries to worm their way into her life, her space, her head. She says she can see the whole pattern already. At this point, my jeans are sticking to my legs, and I can feel the cold fading into just uncomfortable dampness. I'm thinking about just getting up and walking out, but part of me is curious now. Like I want to understand what the hell is happening here. She pulls a small notebook out of her bag and flips through it. It's filled with names. Just first names, but page after page of them written in different colored pens. Some have little notes next to them, crossed out words, stars, underlines. She taps the page and says she keeps records. That's how she spots patterns. She tells me she's been tracking guys like me for years. She asks me what I was planning to say next after the earring comment. I tell her I wasn't planning anything, but she just shakes her head like that's exactly what she expected me to say. She starts writing my name, just my first name, into the notebook in this slow, deliberate way like she's carving it in. Then she underlines it twice. The air between us feels heavy now. I'm aware of every sound, the ice machine, the low hum of the fridge behind the bar, the creak of someone shifting in their seat nearby. I glance toward the door, and she notices. She tells me leaving now would make me like all the rest. She says that I want to be different. I'll sit here until she's finished. So I sit there in cold, sticky jeans while she tells me about 3 other guys she's caught. Her stories are messy, jumping between timelines, mixing in stuff that clearly wasn't about them at all. One of them apparently stole her idea for a zine. Another one said he liked her handwriting and then coasted her. Another one wore a scarf she thought belonged to her. The longer she talks, the more I get the sense this has nothing to do with me personally. I'm just a slot she's filled in her mental lineup. I stop trying to explain myself because it's obvious nothing I say is going to matter. Eventually, she closes the notebook, puts it back in her bag, and leans back like the scene's over. She says she's done here. No goodbye, no check-in to see if I'm okay, just gets up and walks toward the door. The whole bar is watching her leave, then watching me like I'm supposed to do something. I sit there for a second, trying to decide if I should order another drink or just leave before she changes her mind and comes back. I choose leaving. Walking to my car, I keep thinking about the notebook, about how many ends were in there, whether mine was going to get its own story later. I don't even want to know. I went home, changed out of the jeans, and blocked her on everything.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I don't usually go to people's houses on the first date. There's something about meeting in public, coffee shops, bars, restaurants, that feels safer. But this was technically the 3rd time I'd seen Dan. First was coffee at this quirky little cafe. Second was a random trivia night at some dive bar where somehow he knew every answer to questions about 80s TV shows. He seemed normal enough, weird sense of humor, but not in a bad way. So when he suggested cooking dinner at his place, I figured, why not? It was casual, right? We already had some kind of rhythm. His apartment was this strange blend of clean and cluttered. When I walked in, the couch was spotless, the cushions fluffed and arranged perfectly. But then there were these stacks of old magazines shoved haphazardly in the hallway, and on a shelf near the kitchen, 5 empty glass bottles were lined up like trophies, all different shapes, dusty, some with dried leaves or petals inside. It gave me this off-kilter feeling, like the kind of place someone meticulously curated but didn't really live in. Then there was the cat. I didn't even know he had one until it darted across the kitchen counter, knocking over a small salt shaker with a loud clatter. Dan barely blinked, just mumbled an apology as the cat disappeared into the living room like it owned the place. The whole scene felt like a snapshot of normal life, except for that weird bottle collection and the cat running wild. We stood in the kitchen, and he launched into the story about a camping trip he went on with his friends last summer. His hands were moving a lot, chopping the air as he spoke, laughing at his own jokes like he was performing for an audience of one. I was leaning against the counter, nodding along, taking small sips of the wine he poured. The kitchen smelled faintly of garlic and something boiling on the stove. Maybe pasta. Then, out of nowhere, he reached over to a magnetic strip mounted on the wall and pulled down this massive chef's knife. Not like a little paring knife or something for peeling vegetables. This was the kind of blade you see on cooking shows when they're hacking through whole chickens or slicing thick cuts of meat. He held it in one hand and kept talking like it was nothing, using the knife almost like a prop to emphasize points in his story. Every time he had a dramatic moment, he'd wave it around, slicing the air with the blade. I laughed nervously at first, thinking maybe he was just trying to be theatrical. But there was something off about the way he handled it, like he was far too comfortable. Without breaking his flow, he suddenly spun the knife expertly in his hand, took a step toward the wall behind me, and, before I could react, threw it. Not a gentle toss, either. Full power. The blade slammed into the wall just 2 inches from my head, sticking there deep enough to make the paint crack around it. The sharp thunk echoed louder than I expected in the small apartment. I swear I felt my wine ripple in the glass. My entire body froze. My heart hammered so hard it almost drowned out everything else. A flush of heat surged up my neck and face, but I stayed perfectly still because I honestly didn't know if moving was safer or not. The knife was buried in the wall less than an inch from where my head had been seconds before. Dan just grinned like he just delivered the punchline to the funniest joke ever told. "That's what I call good aim," he said casually. Like I was supposed to be impressed, like this was flirting or some kind of game. I was still staring at the knife, barely able to process what just happened. A little crack had formed in the paint around the blade, jagged and thin like a spider web. I could almost feel the impact reverberating in my skull. He pulled the knife out and set it on the counter like it was just any other kitchen tool. No apology. No check I was okay. No, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Just nothing. The cat jumped back up on the counter again, sniffing at the knife like it was some new toy, and Dan shooed it away absent-mindedly. I was still leaning against the counter, trying to steady my breath, debating if I should make up an excuse to leave or just quietly walk out. But then he started telling another story, still holding the knife, about how he used to work in a restaurant and learned how to throw knives for accuracy. He laughed about how his friends would freak out, but no one ever got hurt. My stomach clenched. I realized I could have been the first. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "That's impressive," I said, putting my glass down on the counter a little too hard. He nodded, oblivious to the tension settling into my shoulders. I felt trapped in this weird bubble of casual danger. The pasta was boiling on the stove, but I couldn't bring myself to care about dinner anymore. I decided to play it cool. "I think I should check on something in my car," I said, grabbing my purse. Dan just nodded, not looking up from the stove. "No, stay. No, do you want to hang out a little longer?" Nothing but the hum of the burner and the quiet clinking of pots. I made my way to the door, but before I left, I noticed little marks on the wall where the knife had landed. Small chips in the paint, like someone had thrown sharp objects there before. The wall was scuffed in more than one place. My steps quickened. Outside, the air felt heavy and thick. I could feel my hands trembling and clammy, even though it wasn't warm. I locked my car doors as soon as I got inside, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. Through the window, I could still see Dan moving around inside, twirling the knife again like it was a magic wand while stirring the sauce. I didn't look back. I didn't even wait for the engine to warm up. I just pulled out of the parking spot and onto the street. By the time I hit the highway, I'd blocked his number. I was half watching some cooking competition on TV when I swiped right on Perry's profile. She had this artsy vibe in her photos, thick black eyeliner, a couple of tattoos peeking out from under her sleeves, and a smile caught mid-laugh like she was always on the edge of some inside joke. Her bio was short but intriguing. Coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and people who can tell a story. She seemed cool, so we started chatting. She was quick with replies, sarcastic in a way that felt playful and genuine, and when she suggested meeting at this coffee shop that doubled as a plant store, I liked the idea. It sounded casual and unique enough to be interesting. The day came, I got there first. The place smelled like a mix of rich espresso and wet soil, like a little oasis in the middle of the city. Huge fiddle-leaf figs and monstera plants created these green walls that blocked part of the counter. I stood pretending to browse the succulents by the window, but really I was just nervously glancing at the door every few seconds. And she walked in. Harry looked exactly like her pictures. That sharp eyeliner, tousled hair, and that big infectious energy that made the whole room feel brighter. She wasn't just smiling. She had this kind of loud, magnetic presence, like she just stepped out of a movie scene and everything else slowed down for her. She waved, started walking over, and that's when I noticed he was behind her. A guy, tall, close behind her, moving like he belonged there. I figured maybe it was a brother or a close friend, but the way they moved together wasn't sibling-like. They were comfortable, familiar, too much so. They came up to me side by side, and Perry just said it, like it was no big deal. "This is my ex." Then she added casually, "He always approves my boyfriends." I stood there blinking, trying to make sense of that. I'd been at awkward dates before, but never one where the girl brought her ex along as some kind of live-in dating referee. Owen, that was the guy's name, shook my hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. His smile was polite but unreadable, the kind that makes you wonder if he's calculating something behind those eyes. We all sat down at this small table tucked into a corner surrounded by hanging plants and little pots of herbs. The conversation started, but it was clear I was the outsider. Perry and Owen had this easy rhythm, a language of inside jokes and half-finished sentences that left me scrambling to keep up. They talked over each other, finishing each other's thoughts, their laughter overlapping. I felt like I crashed a reunion I wasn't supposed to attend. Occasionally, Perry would turn to me with a sharp question. Are you a morning person? Or can you handle long stretches of silence? And then glance sideways at Owen, as if waiting for his silent approval or disapproval. It was bizarre, like they were running me through some kind of compatibility test. I was the subject, not a date. They didn't shy away from talking about their past relationship. Their relationship, like it was nothing. Perry casually mentioned fights they'd had and memories of trips, even the reasons they broke up. Owen would sometimes jump into correct details, and they'd laugh like they were reminiscing over an old sitcom episode. Meanwhile, I was sipping my coffee way too fast, trying not to look like I was about to bolt. Then Owen shifted gears. He started asking me questions, but not the usual small talk. It was more like an interview. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you believe in second chances? Have you ever cheated? His tone was calm, almost too calm, but his eyes never left mine. He was studying every twitch of my face, every hesitation. Perry just watched, nodding now and then like she was taking mental notes. The strangest part, how casually they touched each other. Not in a romantic way, but like a tether. She'd smooth his sleeve, he'd tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Little touches that exes usually stop doing when they're done. It was like they were still connected in a way I couldn't fully understand. Half an hour in, I realized I'd barely gotten a word in. Every time I tried to answer, they derailed the conversation with some shared story. I'd say I liked hiking, and suddenly they were describing a time they got lost together in the woods, drinking from a creek, laughing till their sides hurt. Their chemistry was so thick, so dense, I felt like a ghost stuck on the outside of this two-person bubble. Then Perry excused herself to go to the bathroom. The moment she left, Owen's whole vibe shifted. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and said in that same calm voice, I've seen a lot of guys come and go. Most of them don't last long. His eyes were still locked on mine. Perry can be intense. I'm the only one who really understands her. It wasn't a warning exactly, more like a statement of fact, something he expected me to just accept. Before I could say anything, Perry came back, and the dynamic flipped again. They slipped right back into their rhythm, finishing each other's sentences and sharing jokes that made no sense to me. I was left to just nod and try to look interested. When the bill came, Owen grabbed it without asking. Perry didn't even glance my way. She just said thanks like it was routine. As we stood to leave, she told me she'd be in touch with this casual, distracted tone, like I had just passed some preliminary round of an audition. Owen gave me a look I couldn't read, not friendly, not hostile, just knowing, like he was already cataloging whether I measured up. Walking to my car, it hit me. I'd just been on a date where I was basically a contestant being judged by the guy who used to be exactly where I was trying to be. And Perry. Maybe she wasn't really looking for someone new. Maybe she just liked parading people past Owen like trophies, testing their worth while still tethered to the past. I got in my car, started the engine, and didn't look back. So I meet Cameron on Tinder after like a week of half-hearted swiping. His profile isn't anything crazy, but he looks normal enough. Clean haircut, a picture with a dog, a couple of hiking shots. We talk for a few days. He's not laugh out loud funny, but he's easy to chat with, and he doesn't type in all caps or overuse emojis, which is honestly more than I can say for half the matches I get. We decide to meet up for drinks at this bar that's not too far from me. It's one of those dimly lit places with mismatched chairs and a jukebox no one actually uses. He shows up wearing a hoodie and jeans, casual, and right away he's more talkative in person than he was over text. We have 2 drinks each, talk about random stuff. Nothing deep, mostly surface level, but I'm fine with that. When it's time to head out, I say I'll just grab a rideshare, but he offers to drive me home. I hesitate for like half a second because I wasn't expecting to get in a car with him, but he's been fine all night, and the bar is starting to get noisy with a group of people celebrating something, so I say sure. We walk to his car, and it's spotless. No trash on the floor, no random jackets in the back. The seats even smell faintly like fabric cleaner. I buckle up, and he pulls out of the parking lot. For the first few minutes, everything's normal. We're talking about music, traffic, whatever. I'm half distracted checking my phone. Then I look up and realize nothing out the window looks familiar, like at all. We should have hit the main road toward my neighborhood by now, but instead we're weaving through side streets and heading toward an area I know is in the opposite direction. I tell myself maybe he's taking some shortcut I don't know about, but the longer we keep going, the less it feels like a shortcut, and the more it feels like a detour. I glance at the GPS on his dashboard, but the screen's off. No directions rang. I casually reach for the door handle, not to get out, but just to check, and that's when I feel it. Locked. Not just locked, but that weird resistance that means the child locks are on. I try the other side in my head, picturing it, and realize it's the same. The only way out is from the outside. My stomach drops, but I try not to let it show. He's still talking like nothing's weird, telling me about some podcast he likes. My brain is suddenly running on two tracks, one listening to him and nodding, the other trying to figure out what my options are if this goes bad. I can feel my phone in my pocket, and already thinking about how fast I could pull it out and call someone without him noticing. We pass a gas station, and I mentally mark it, wondering if I could make some excuse to stop there. But before I can even bring it up, he takes another turn, and now we're on a long, empty road with no streetlights. The only lights from his headlights and the glow of the dashboard. He's still in full conversation mode, but I notice he's not actually answering any of the small questions I asked back. It's like he's just filling the space with his own voice. The car feels smaller now, and I keep glancing at the side mirror, trying to see if there are any other cars behind us. There aren't. I test the lock again quietly, but it doesn't budge. The click of me trying it must have been louder than I thought because he glances over at me for a second before looking back at the road. That glance tells me he knows I noticed. At this point, I'm weighing whether to go for the nuclear option, yanking the steering wheel or hitting something, but I decide against it because I don't know if that makes things better or worse. My heart's beating faster, but I keep my face neutral. We finally come to a stop at an intersection, and I see another car pulling up behind us in the rearview mirror. It's like a little jolt of hope. I casually say I need to use the bathroom, thinking maybe he'll stop somewhere now that there's another car in sight. He just keeps driving when the light changes. A couple minutes later, we pass a small strip mall that's still lit up, a late-night convenience store and a takeout place. I blurt out that I'm starving and that I'll grab us snacks if he pulls over. There's this pause, and then he makes a slow turn into the parking lot. The second we stop, I'm out of my seatbelt and pulling at the handle from the inside, which of course still doesn't work. I force my voice to stay light and say something about getting the door, and he unlocks it from his side. The moment it clicks, I open it, step out, and walk straight toward the convenience store without looking back. Inside, I hang near the counter and pretend to browse candy until I see him pull out of the lot. He doesn't circle back. I stay there for another 10 minutes just to be sure, then order a rideshare home from the store. When I finally get back to my place, I check my phone and see he's already unmatched me. We met on Tinder about a week before, just swapping messages about food, movies, and those little random pet peeves that make you roll your eyes. She had this dry, sarcastic humor that came through in every text. At one point, she sent me this voice note that made me think she was actually pretty fun. It was one of those laughs that sounded real and not forced. So when we finally met up for our first date, just coffee, it felt easy. She wore this oversized sweater that made her look cozy and a little mysterious. We mostly just people watch, complained about how terrible public playlists are, and talking about the worst movies we'd seen lately. No red flags, no weird vibes, just a chill night. So the second date rolls around, and we decide to hit this ramen place downtown. I get there a little early like usual, and the place is warm and steamy, the kind of spot where the windows fog up from all the broth boiling. Lydia walks in wearing this heavy dark coat, one of those puffy, stiff ones that look like they could take a bullet, or at least keep you warm through an Arctic freeze. The air outside is so cold it's almost painful, the kind that makes your face feel tight and tingly. She's got her scarf wrapped so high around her neck that it's practically covering half her face, only her eyes peeking out. We sit down, order the ramen, and it's all normal. We chat about dumb things, the usual "what's your favorite noodle" kind of stuff. Nothing that sends off any alarm bells. She's still got that dry wit, throwing little sarcastic comments my way that make me laugh. After dinner, we're standing near the door, and she's wrestling with her scarf, trying to pull it off. I offer to help her with the coat because it looks like one of those tricky ones. You know, the kind that's stiff and clunky, and if you're not careful, you knock over the whole table while trying to get out of it. She slides one arm out, and I start pulling the other sleeve free. That's when I hear it, a heavy clunk hitting the tile floor. I look down. There it is. A huge kitchen knife lying flat on the cold restaurant floor. Not some tiny pocket knife or keychain blade, but a legit chef's knife. The kind you see on cooking shows when they're hacking through a roast or dicing onions with precision. The blade is long enough that I can actually see my own face reflected in it. I freeze and it takes a second to register what just fell out of her purse. My brain races trying to process how and why a knife like that would be in her bag. I glance up at Lydia, expecting some kind of reaction. Shock, embarrassment, maybe a quick apology. But she's smiling. Not a nervous smile or a sheepish one. Just a casual, like it's no big deal smile. She lets out this quick little laugh and says, "Oh, it's just in case." That's it. No explanation. No, I feel safer carrying it. No, I'm into cooking and it slipped in there. Just in case, like she's naming a new purse or some essential accessory. I crouch down and pick up the knife. The handle is warm, like it's been nestled against her body for a while. It's not cold metal left forgotten. I hand it back to her, half expecting her to pocket it carefully or at least make a joke to lighten the mood. But no, she just slips it right back into the bag, not even glancing at it like it's completely normal. The whole walk to the parking lot feels different. There's this weight in the air, this unspoken tension I can't shake. Every time she moves, I can hear the subtle sound of metal shifting inside the purse. It's a constant reminder that there's a weapon somewhere in there. She's chatting about some movie she wants to see this weekend, throwing out quick, funny observations about the trailers, but I'm barely paying attention. My mind keeps going back to the knife, to the way she carried it like it was just another thing, like lip balm or keys. Questions flood in. Does she carry it everywhere? Is this normal for her? And if so, why? What kind of life requires a chef's knife in your handbag? Part of me wants to ask, really ask, why she needs it, but the other part knows some answers you can't take back. I'm not sure I want to hear that story. We get to the street where our cars are parked. She unlocks hers with a casual swipe of her fingers and says she had a good time. There's no hint of awkwardness or embarrassment about the knife at all. For her, it was just a moment, a quip, a casual just in case. For me, it's a red flag waving wildly. As she opens her car door, her purse tips slightly and I catch the gleam of metal again. Just for a second. She pushes it back inside without missing a beat, shuts the door, and waves goodbye. I get in my own car and sit there for a moment, trying to steady my racing thoughts. The drive home is a blur of reflection and disbelief. What the hell just happened? How did a perfectly normal night turn into something so strange? Lydia never gave off any threatening vibes before that moment. No aggressive energy, no weird comments, no flashing signs that she was dangerous or unpredictable. Just this normal-seeming person who happened to carry around a giant kitchen knife like it was a phone charger. When I finally got home, I sat on the couch staring at my phone. Should I bring it up next time? Should I ask her what that was all about? But then I remembered the way she laughed when she said, just in case, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I realized there probably wouldn't be a next time. That night, I unmatched her. I met this guy, Matt, on Tinder. He came off as one of those harmless, slightly awkward types, the kind who doesn't try too hard to be cool, but kind of is in an endearing way. His profile was mostly pictures of him holding random mugs of coffee in different places. Coffee shops, parks, his kitchen, with one blurry hiking shot thrown in like an afterthought. We messaged a bit, and he actually made me laugh a couple of times. His dry humor was subtle, but I liked it. So I figured, why not meet up? Worst case, it's a funny story. We agreed on this small, kind of old-fashioned Italian place he called Cozy. It wasn't fancy red vinyl booths that had seen better days, yellow light bulbs hanging from the ceiling that gave everything a slightly sepia tone, and a fish tank by the entrance with two very depressed-looking goldfish swimming in endless circles. The kind of place that felt stuck in the 80s in a good way. When I arrived, Matt was already there, sitting in the back booth. He waved me over like we were old friends, the kind of wave that was hopeful but maybe a little awkward. The first half of the date was okay. Matt talked a lot, like a lot. He rattled on about his job, how nobody there really gets him, how he felt like an outsider in a sea of small talk and office politics. I nodded along, trying to look engaged, while secretly counting how many garlic knots I could eat without looking rude. His intensity was just a little much. The way he stared when I talked felt like he was memorizing every syllable, and it made me nervous. Not creepy exactly, but definitely intense. About halfway through the meal, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. The restroom was down this short, dimly lit hallway past the kitchen. There was only one single stall room with a door that looked older than me, paint peeling, the handle scratched and worn. I went into the usual wash my hands and then tried to leave. That's when I realized the door wouldn't open. At first, I thought maybe the handle was one of those stubborn ones you have to jiggle, but it was stuck fast. I twisted and pulled harder, but it didn't budge. I checked the latch. It was already set to unlocked. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it must be some kind of mechanical fault. Then I heard it. Matt's laugh. It was faint at first, like he was somewhere nearby, but then I realized it was right outside the bathroom door. Slow, drawn-up chuckles that didn't sound like the nervous or awkward guy I'd met at dinner. They felt off. He said through the door, just wanted to finish something first. I froze. My brain couldn't process the sentence. Finish what? Why was he standing outside the bathroom door? I tried the handle again. No luck. I even shoved my shoulder into the door, but it held fast. I pressed my ear against the door, and I could hear faint noises. Metallic clinks, like utensils or plates, but no words. He wasn't speaking anymore, just moving around, punctuated by that weird, under-the-breath laugh. The air in the tiny bathroom started to feel thick, like the walls were closing in. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed annoyingly, growing louder in my ears. I pulled out my phone, hoping to text someone, but of course there was no signal in that weird hallway. I even tried holding it up toward the ceiling like that would magically fix it. I yelled for help. Anyone. But the sounds that came back were just the muffled hum of the restaurant far away, clattering dishes, faint chatter from the dining room. I pounded on the door with my fists, hoping a server would hear, but the kitchen was between me and the rest of the restaurant, so the noise probably just blended in. Then Matt's voice came again, closer this time. "I'll be right there," he said. It wasn't reassuring. It sounded final, like an announcement of intent. I looked around the cramped bathroom, searching for something. Anything that I could use if I had to defend myself. There was a metal trash can, a toilet brush in its holder, and one of those flimsy paper towel dispensers that would probably snap if I looked at it wrong. I grabbed the trash can and stood near the sink, readying myself. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. My arms started to ache from holding the trash can like a weapon. I could hear him breathing outside, just one slow, deliberate exhale, and then silence. Suddenly, the handle on the outside turned. The door creaked open an inch. I didn't wait to see what he looked like. I shoved the door hard, squeezed through the narrow gap, and practically ran down the hallway. He was standing just off to the side, holding something behind his back. I didn't stop to see what it was. I just kept moving, my shoulder brushing the wall as I rushed past him. I could feel his eyes on me watching, but he didn't say a word. Back in the dining area, I grabbed my coat off the booth and muttered something to the nearest server, a vague excuse about needing to leave. I headed straight for the door without looking back once. Outside, the cold hit me like a wave. I pulled out my phone, and this time I had signal. My hands were shaking so badly that dialing my rideshare took 3 tries. When the car pulled up, I got in without a word, staring out the window the whole way home. I never turned around to see if Matt followed. When I got home, the first thing I did was block him on everything. You ever have one of those moments where everything feels completely normal, and then in the blink of an eye, you're thrown into a situation so bizarre you swear you must have stepped into someone else's life? That's exactly what happened with Sally. We met on Tinder about a week before. She seemed pretty normal at first glance. A few selfies, one picture with a dog that wasn't hers. I checked because why not? And her bio said she was into adventure and late night conversations. I didn't read too much into it, just thought she sounded fun. Our messages were light, sometimes flirty, nothing heavy. So when she suggested grabbing drinks, I said sure. We went to this dive bar downtown. The kind of place where the lighting is dim enough that you don't really notice the sticky tables and the jukebox only half works. It had that weird charm, you know. Conversation flowed easy. Nothing awkward, just casual teasing and a little flirting. By the end of the night, it was getting chilly outside, and I offered to have her come back to my place for a bit to warm up. She didn't hesitate, just smiled and said sure, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My apartment is nothing fancy, a small one-bedroom with barely enough space to swing a cat. I kicked my shoes off by the door and offered her a drink. I put on some low music, just background noise, something mellow. She wandered around, glancing at random stuff on my shelves, making those little oh cool noises people do when they're checking out someone's space for the first time. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then, out of nowhere, I heard this massive bang coming from the front door. Not a polite knock or a buzz, but a hard, violent hit that made the whole doorframe shake. I froze mid-pour, heart pounding. Before I could get to the door, it happened again, louder this time, and then the door swung open. Two guys I didn't know stormed in. Big guys, both looking like they'd been mad long before they got there. They didn't say a word, just stood there with this kind of heavy presence that filled the room. I froze, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was I about to get robbed? Was it some kind of joke? And then Sally, completely calm and unbothered, just said, "Don't worry, they're with me." I blinked. She turned to them and said something low, like a quick reassurance. Then the pieces fell into place. They were her brothers. Her brothers had literally kicked my door down because she hadn't checked in with them in the last hour. The more I thought about it, the crazier it sounded. Instead of calling or texting like normal people, they thought it was a great idea to just break and enter. They didn't smile and didn't introduce themselves. They just stood there, breathing hard, glaring at me like I was the bad guy in their story. I tried to tell them everything was fine, but they didn't budge. One of them gave my place a once-over, like he was looking for traps or weapons, or maybe a reason to dislike me. The other kept grilling Sally, asking if she was sure about me, like she needed their permission or something. Meanwhile, my heart was still hammering from the door getting slammed open. I'm pretty sure the neighbors heard. I could almost imagine someone calling the cops, but no one did. Sally just kept laughing it off, telling her brothers I was cool and that we were just hanging out. But whatever calm vibe we had before was totally gone. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. And I couldn't stop thinking about how fast they'd gotten there. I hadn't even given Sally my address until maybe 20 minutes before. That meant either she texted it to them immediately, or, God forbid, they were tracking her somehow. Neither option made me feel good. The brothers stayed for a few minutes, standing around like jury members deciding if I was a threat or not. They didn't sit, didn't make small talk. Just stood there, silent but tense. Then one muttered something under his breath, and they both turned around and left. Doors still cracked open behind them, like they didn't even care about being polite. Sally shrugged, acting like this was just how they are. She even joked that it was because they care. But all I could see was how easily two strangers had just forced their way into my home. How quickly they could have hurt me if they'd thought for a second that something was wrong. Later, I walked her to the door. The lock felt loose, the frame slightly dented where they hit. I ran my hand over it and couldn't shake the unease. How many other people had those brothers barging in on their sister? Was I supposed to just accept that? After she left, I checked my place twice. I paced between the living room and the door, waiting for something to happen, waiting for the door to slam open again, but it never did. That night, I barely slept. Every little noise from the hallway outside made me jump. My mind wouldn't stop racing. What if they came back? What if Sally wasn't who she seemed? By morning, I knew what I had to do. I texted her a simple message. It's not going to work out. Then I deleted her number, blocked her on everything. The dent in the doorframe is still there. Every time I pass it, I remember that night, how fast normal turned into something I never expected, and how close I came to letting someone like that into my life. So I met Ethan on Tinder. His profile was nothing crazy, just a few pictures of him hiking, some shots with his dog, and a bio full of bad jokes about how he was a lone wolf. I thought it was kind of funny and refreshing compared to all the usual generic bios, so I swiped right. We chatted for a bit, nothing wild, just the usual getting to know you stuff. What I did for work, what music I liked, that kind of thing. Ethan came across as chill and laid back, someone who probably spent a lot of time outdoors. I figured meeting up wouldn't be a disaster. We decided to meet at his place. He said it was this old house on the edge of town, near the woods, which sounded pretty cool, mysterious even, a nice change from the usual coffee shop dates. I pictured a cozy cabin vibe, maybe with a fire pit out back. I was looking forward to it. When I got there, I realized the house was older than I'd expected. The kind with creaky floors that groaned underfoot, and a smell of aged wood mixed with something else I couldn't place at first. After a moment, it hit me. Dog hair. Lots of dog hair. The front door opened before I even knocked, and there it was. The dog. And not just any dog. This was a massive beast, easily the biggest dog I'd ever seen in person. It looked like some kind of mastiff crossed with a bear, all thick muscles and heavy paws. It was standing right by the door, and the second I stepped inside, it let a low guttural growl, showing its teeth. I froze. Ethan just laughed and said, "Don't worry, he's just protective." His tone was light, but I could tell the dog wasn't messing around. The way it stared at me, I felt a chill creep up my spine. I stuck close to Ethan, figuring the dog wouldn't actually do anything if he was around. Ethan shut the door behind me and said, almost without looking at me, "Try not to move too fast. He hasn't met anyone new in years." That sentence stuck in my head. Why hadn't he mentioned that before? I wanted to ask, but I kept quiet. Something about it unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. The dog didn't relax. Instead, it started circling me, eyes locked on mine like I was some kind of intruder. Ethan tried to pet it a couple of times, but the dog snapped its head away like it didn't want him messing with it either. I was stuck in this weird limbo between wanting to laugh nervously and wanting to get the hell out of there. Then, without warning, the dog lunged. It clamped down on my arm with teeth that felt like they were made to tear through flesh. The pain was immediate and intense, like getting hit with a baseball bat and then crushed by steel jaws. I screamed, and Ethan looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe what was happening either. The dog didn't let go right away. I was frozen for a moment, heart pounding, trying desperately not to panic. Eventually, Ethan grabbed hold of the dog and pulled it off me, apologizing over and over. But it didn't matter. My arm was bleeding, deep teeth marks visible through the blood. He called an ambulance right away. I sat on the couch, clutching my arm, trying to keep my breathing steady. Meanwhile, the dog just sat off to the side, watching me with those same intense eyes that still made my skin crawl. Ethan kept saying it was never supposed to happen, that the dog had issues and hadn't trusted anyone new in years. At the hospital, the doctor said I was lucky. The bite had gone deeper than it looked at first glance, and I needed stitches and a round of antibiotics to keep infection at bay. The whole time, I couldn't stop replaying what had happened, trying to figure out why Ethan hadn't warned me about the dog's aggression. Was it an accident? Was he irresponsible? Or worse, did he just not care? Afterwards, I found out from one of Ethan's neighbors that the dog had bitten someone else about a year before. And from what they said, Ethan hadn't done much to train or control the dog since then. It wasn't a one-time mistake, it was an ongoing risk. That realization hit me hard. This wasn't just an accident. It felt like a warning I should have heeded. I blocked Ethan out of everything, wiped him out of my life without looking back. Every time I see a big dog now, especially Mastiff-like breeds, my arm aches just a little. It's like a physical reminder that what happened was real. Sometimes my heart races and I get this weird tightness in my chest, like I'm bracing for something bad to happen again. Meeting Ethan had started out like any other casual date. I laughed at his jokes, admired his love for hiking, and even liked that he was a lone wolf of sorts. But that night at his house, that night changed everything. It was a sharp reminder that sometimes beneath a calm exterior, there can be things you never see coming. And the worst part, it wasn't just the dog. It was the fact that Ethan didn't think to warn me about it. That he let me walk into that situation blind. It made me question everything about him. His judgment, his responsibility, maybe even his character. Now, whenever I think about dating again, I find myself scanning for red flags I might have missed before. I wonder if I'm too cautious or just smart enough to avoid another disaster. But one thing's clear. I won't be going near a giant dog without a serious heads up anytime soon. Her profile was kind of chill. A few pics of her in this tiny apartment, maybe a couple of plants, nothing too extra. We chatted for a few days, nothing super deep but enough to decide to meet up. She invited me over to her place, said it was cozy, and she liked having people around. I thought cool, something low-key. I get there around 8 p.m. The building's old, like those apartment blocks where the paint is peeling and the stairs creak with every step. I ring her buzzer and she lets me in. The hallway smells like old carpet mixed with cooking spices or something. I'm already a little uneasy but push it aside. It's just an old place. We get inside her apartment, which matches her vibe. It's cramped, dim lighting. Half the bulbs are flickering, and there's this weird smell that I can't place. Maybe like burnt popcorn or something stale. She's smiling, shows me around, points out the plants and some random posters on the walls. It's all chill enough. We sit down on our couch. It's an old one, threadbare, but she seems comfortable on it. We talk about dumb stuff, laugh a little, she makes a playlist, and the music fills the awkward silences. Everything's fine, but I'm watching the clock, thinking about heading out soon. After maybe an hour or so, I say I should probably get going. She tells me to wait a bit longer. Don't go just yet. I'm starting to get that slight feeling like something's off, but I tell myself it's just her being nice, wanting to keep me there a little longer. I stand up and head for the door, expecting her to walk me out or at least say goodbye. When I reach for the handle, I realize it's locked. At first, I think maybe it's one of those weird locks where you have to pull or push a button. Nope, it's locked tight. I ask her to unlock it, but she just smiles and reaches into her pocket, pulls out the key, and pockets it again without saying anything. Then she tells me I shouldn't leave yet. I'm standing there, blinking like, wait, what? She's watching me, and her smile feels less friendly now, more like a warning. My heart starts racing, but I don't want to freak out. I try to joke it off, say maybe she locked it by accident. She shakes her head, still holding the key. I start pacing a little, feeling trapped. I glance around her apartment, looking for a window or some kind of way out. But the windows are small, way too high to reach, and they look stuck shut. The blinds are drawn tight, so I can't see anything outside. She sits back down on the couch like nothing's wrong, starts scrolling through her phone like she expects me to just chill there too. I'm stuck between telling her to unlock the door and just losing it. I try asking again, but she just gives me this weird look like I'm overreacting or something. I notice the way her eyes linger on me, calm but intense, like she's studying me. Minutes feel like hours. I'm getting more uncomfortable. The air feels thick like the room's shrinking. I'm thinking about what could happen if she decides not to let me out at all. The thought makes my stomach drop. I start testing the door, pushing and pulling, but nothing. The key's still in her pocket. I think about trying to call someone, but my phone is on silent in my bag, and I didn't even get to text anyone before I left. She tells me again, quieter this time, that I shouldn't go yet. I ask her why, but she doesn't answer. Instead, she just gets up and walks over to a cabinet, pulls out some snacks and a bottle of wine, and sets them on the coffee table like this whole locking me in thing is no big deal. I sit back down, heart still pounding, wondering what the hell I'm supposed to do now. We talk some more, but the mood is totally different. I'm half watching her, half eyeing the door, waiting for her to let me go. The thing is, I don't want to cause a scene or make her angry, but at the same time, being locked inside someone's place when I barely know them feels way too intense. At some point, I realize she's been watching me quietly, like she's waiting for something from me. Some reaction or maybe a sign that I'm scared. I don't say anything else about the door. I just sit there trying to keep my cool, but the whole time I'm calculating how I'm going to get out once she finally gives me the key. After what feels like forever, she finally stands up and tosses the key on the table. She says I can leave if I want, but her tone isn't warm or welcoming. It's like she dared me to walk out. I grab the key, unlock the door, and get out of there fast. The moment I step outside, I breathe in deep like I just escaped some kind of trap. I never went back or messaged her again. He seemed funny enough, with a few jokes scattered in his bio that made me smile. We'd been texting for a little while, nothing too wild or deep, just light, easy conversation. Enough to make me think, yeah, I want to meet this dude. We initially planned for him to come over to my place, but then he hit me with, actually, why did you come to mine? It's more laid back. I agreed mostly out of curiosity and not wanting to make a big deal out of it. When I got to his building, the vibe immediately threw me off. It was one of those older apartment buildings with cracked walls and faded paint, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen much care in years. The hallways were dim and dusty, the kind of place where you half expected to hear strange creaks or see shadows darting out of the corner of your eye. But I told myself not to judge. Sometimes the inside is better, right? Zane greeted me at the door with a smile that felt warm enough, but the apartment itself was weirdly quiet, like almost too quiet. The only light came from the soft glow of his computer screen, which lit up most of the living room in a cold, bluish hue. No music, no TV noise, just that eerie screen light flickering in the dark. I figured maybe he was tired or just an introvert who liked the silence. We hung out for a bit, chatting about random things, movies, video games, music, the usual getting to know you stuff. He pulled up a game on his computer and we started playing. It was comfortable at first, the kind of relaxed vibe you hope for on a first meet. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Wanna see my room?" I shrugged and said, "Sure, why not?" I figured it would be just another normal part of hanging out. He led me down this narrow hallway that felt even more cramped and dimly lit than the rest of the apartment. When we got to his bedroom, that's when things took a turn. I glanced around and immediately noticed something strange. Right there, on a shelf next to his bed, was a bunch of women's driver's licenses, just lined up neatly like some kind of trophy collection. Not in a box or hidden away, but displayed out in the open almost proudly. There were dozens of them. Some looked brand new, fresh plastic and glossy photos, while others had a little wear but not much. I could tell a few were barely a year old. Some had current addresses, and the whole thing was arranged with a weird kind of precision. I froze for a moment, completely thrown off. I didn't know what to say. It was like walking into some nightmare where something familiar turns twisted right in front of you. I looked back at Zane, expecting some explanation, some joke maybe, but he just noticed me staring and said casually, "Oh, those are for my exes." Like it was the most normal thing in the world to collect IDs from women he dated, like it was just some harmless hobby. My stomach dropped. That's when I really started to notice how strange it was. These IDs weren't expired or forgotten relics. They were current, active documents, some with recent addresses. It wasn't just a souvenir shelf. It felt like something else entirely. Creepy, unsettling, like a warning I wasn't supposed to see. I tried to stay casual, laughing it off like it was no big deal. But inside my mind was racing. Why would someone keep all these IDs? And why so many? What did it mean that they were just sitting there on display? It didn't feel like trophies from past relationships. It felt like possession, like evidence of control. The room itself was kind of a mess, with piles of old clothes on the floor and empty energy drink cans stacked precariously on his desk. On the bed was a notebook left open, pages filled with scribbles, names, dates, some crossed out, others circled. I couldn't make sense of it. It looked like some kind of list, but I had no idea what for. The whole vibe of the room made my skin crawl, like I was trapped in some weird shrine to his past. Zane started rambling about how he had this weird habit of holding on to things from people who mattered to him. He sounded almost proud of it, like keeping these IDs was a way to hold on to those connections, or maybe hold on to control. I wasn't sure which, but neither option felt good. I looked for a way to escape the room, to get out of that weird little world of his. I said I needed to use the bathroom, hoping to break the tension and find my way back to the living room. But every time I tried to get up, Zane would subtly block my path with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The room felt smaller and smaller, like walls were closing in on me. I kept thinking about all those women's faces, their names, their personal info just sitting there out in the open. What if some of them had no idea he still had their IDs? What if they never wanted to be reminded of him, or worse, never wanted him to have those documents at all? The thought made my skin crawl. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare where the lines between normal and terrifying blurred. On the surface, Zane seemed chill, funny even, but behind that door, surrounded by those IDs, I saw something darker, something dangerous. I finally managed to say I wasn't feeling great and needed to head home. He didn't stop me, but his eyes followed me all the way to the door like he was silently calculating something. I didn't look back as I stepped into the hallway. When I got home, I immediately blocked him on everything. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a clean break. What haunts me most is how casual he was about it all. Like collecting IDs from women he dated was just another routine part of his life. No guilt, no shame, just possession. It's like he kept a little piece of each girl, not in a sweet, sentimental way, but like trophies from a hunt. Sometimes late at night, I think about those IDs on his shelf. I wonder if some of those women know they're still there. I wonder if they feel safe, And I wonder how close I came to being just another face, another name, another ID in that creepy collection. I matched with this girl, Rita. Her profile was chill, nothing too flashy, just some pictures of her hiking and a few with her dog. We'd been texting for a couple of weeks, nothing weird, just casual jokes and planning to meet up. We finally set a date for dinner at this small place downtown, somewhere low-key and cozy. I was pretty excited, honestly. Felt like it could be fun. Dinner went okay, nothing extraordinary, but she seemed nice enough. We talked about random stuff, movies, music, some stupid stories from work. The vibe was chill, maybe a little awkward, but nothing that made me think twice. She mentioned she'd drive us back, which I thought was cool. The restaurant was a little out of my way, so I didn't mind. We get into her car after eating, and at first it's just normal. We start driving, music playing softly, her cracking jokes here and there. I'm feeling pretty relaxed, like maybe this was gonna be a decent night after all. But then, about halfway through the ride, she suddenly pulls off the main road and heads into this massive, empty parking lot. It's dark, no cars around except one parked way in the back near the edge. I start wondering what the hell is going on because this is nowhere near where I live or where she said she was taking me. Before I can even say anything, she stops the car and calmly says something that I didn't really catch at first because I was already uneasy. Then, without warning, she unlocks the passenger door and a guy gets in from the shadows. Not some friend or random person I'd expect. This dude looks like he's been waiting there, leaning against the wall of the parking lot. Without a second thought, Rita slides over from the driver's seat to the passenger side, and the guy gets behind the wheel. Like they literally traded places in silence. I'm just sitting there, frozen, trying to process what's happening. This guy starts the engine and drives off like it's the most normal thing ever. I'm trying to figure out what to say or do, but honestly, I was too shocked to speak. The whole situation felt like I was stuck in some messed up movie scene where the characters just switch and the plot twists hard. The guy behind the wheel doesn't say much, just keeps driving in silence. The car takes this long route through side streets I don't recognize, far away from where Rita originally said she lived. My phone's dead, and I didn't bring a charger, so calling anyone or using GPS is out of the question. I'm trying to stay calm, thinking maybe I misunderstood the whole thing. Maybe Rita just wanted to share the drive with her friend, or maybe this was some weird setup. But the more I look at the guy, the more I realize he's giving me this weird look, like he's waiting for me to freak out, but also enjoying that I don't know what's coming next. We finally stop in front of some rundown apartment complex that looks sketchy as hell. The kind of place you see on crime shows where the lights flicker and the stairwell smells like mold and cigarettes. The guy gets out, opens my door, and gestures for me to get out. Rita is nowhere to be seen, and that's when I realize she bailed at the exact moment they switched seats. I'm standing there alone with no idea what the hell to do. The guy starts walking with me toward the building, still not saying a word. My heart's pounding, but I'm trying not to show it, hoping maybe I can keep my cool and find a way out of this mess. Inside the building, the lights are dim, and the air feels heavy, like something's just off. The guy leads me up the stairs and down a hall to a door that's slightly cracked open. He pushes it wide and gestures for me to enter first. I step inside and see a room that looks like a weird mix between a living room and an office, messy papers everywhere, old coffee cups, and some random photos taped to the wall. I'm trying to scan the place, looking for any chance to escape or find a phone, but the guy suddenly shuts the door behind me and locks it. Now it's just me and him in this tiny room with no windows and one flickering light overhead. He finally speaks, but it's just a couple of sentences. Nothing clear, more like warnings or threats that make me feel like I've seriously stepped into something dangerous. I'm trying to keep my voice steady, asking questions, but he's not really interested in talking. Instead, he pulls out a phone and shows me a bunch of pictures of Rita, of me, of random places, like they'd been watching us or planning this. That's when I realized this wasn't just a weird ride or a funny prank. It was planned. Rita and this guy knew each other, and they used me to get me into this trap. I had no idea why or what they wanted, but the whole thing was a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. I managed to keep calm and played it cool for a bit, trying to look for a way out. The guy eventually got distracted by a phone call, and I took that chance to bang on the door as hard as I could. I hoped someone in the building would hear me, or maybe the guy would get spooked and leave. After what felt like forever, the door creaked open, and a neighbor from down the hall heard the noise and came to check. I ran past the guy and out of the building as fast as I could. Outside, the air felt like freedom, but my legs were shaking. I didn't call the cops right away because I was too stunned and scared, but the whole thing stayed with me for weeks. I kept wondering why Rita would do that, why she brought that guy into the car like it was normal, why they planned this whole setup. It was like being used in some sick game I never signed up for. I blocked her on everything and deleted the app, but every time I hear about people meeting strangers online, I think back to that night. It was supposed to be just a chill dinner and a drive home, but instead, it turned into one of the creepiest, most disturbing things I've ever been through. Paul was pretty normal on the app, nothing flashy, just a couple of decent pictures, smiling in casual clothes, and a bio that made him seem laid back, maybe a bit of a homebody. We messaged for a bit, nothing wild, just the usual getting to know you stuff. When he suggested dinner at his place instead of going to some loud bar or noisy restaurant, it actually sounded nice. Something low-key and chill, a break from all the usual crowded spots and background noise. I agreed, thinking it'd be a nice change of pace. When I got to his apartment building on time, I immediately noticed it was one of those older places with creaky floors and a weird smell, something like a mix of wet carpet and old paint. Not really my vibe, but I wasn't there to judge the building. Paul answered the door and invited me in with a casual smile. His place was small, way smaller than I pictured from his photos. The living room was cramped, the kitchen tiny and off to one side, and there was random clutter everywhere. Magazines stacked unevenly, a few empty takeout containers, and miscellaneous stuff scattered around. It wasn't exactly the clean and cozy vibe I was expecting, but I decided it didn't matter. The night was still young. We settled down and Paul started cooking something simple in his tight kitchen. I watched as he moved around, surprisingly confident and efficient in the cramped space. It was kind of impressive. We cracked open a couple of beers, and the conversation started out okay. Talking about music, some shows we liked, stupid life stuff that you usually get through before things get interesting. Then, without warning, there was a loud, sharp knock on the window. At first, I thought maybe it was just some prank or a noisy neighbor messing around outside. The window was right next to the small kitchen table where we were sitting, so I glanced over, a bit startled. And there he was, a guy standing outside, just staring straight at me through the glass. His eyes were cold, unblinking, locked onto me like he was sizing me up. The kind of look that makes your skin crawl. Paul noticed me looking and immediately said, "Don't worry, he's just a friend." But honestly, the way he said it didn't sound reassuring at all. It sounded like Paul was used to this guy showing up unannounced like it was nothing new. I looked back at the window. The guy was still there, unmoving, just watching us. I tried to play it cool, but inside, my heart was pounding. The guy outside didn't blink or look away. He just stood there staring like some silent sentinel. I whispered, "Maybe you should tell him to leave." Paul shrugged and went back to the stove like it was no big deal. I tried to focus on eating, but my appetite vanished. The silence between us grew heavy and awkward. Every few minutes, I stole glances at the window. The guy was still there. Then, weirdly, he lifted his hand and knocked again. This time softer, but still loud enough to be heard inside. Paul finally spoke, but it wasn't to tell the guy to go away. It sounded more like he was inviting him in, which freaked me out even more. I didn't want to cause a scene, but the idea of some random stranger lurking outside, watching my date like he owned the place, was unsettling. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. I froze. Paul got up and opened the door without hesitation, and the guy from the window just walked in like he belonged there. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, heavier. The guy, let's call him Mark, sat down on the couch without saying much. He had this weird grin that didn't reach his eyes. Every time I looked at him, it felt like he was trying to figure me out, like I was some puzzle piece he was playing with. The vibe in the room shifted from casual to tense in seconds. Paul didn't really introduce us properly or explain why Mark was there. It was just this strange silence, filled with awkward glances and forced small talk. Mark kept glancing at me, sometimes smirking like he was amused by my discomfort. Paul just poured drinks and acted like everything was normal, like this was just another typical night. As the minutes dragged on, I noticed Mark kept looking toward the window every so often, like he was waiting for someone or something. Each time, his smile grew wider, almost sinister. The feeling of being watched became suffocating. It hit me. This wasn't just a casual hangout. Paul and Mark had some kind of history, and Mark showing up like this was some twisted ritual or game I was unwillingly part of. I started feeling trapped. My phone was on the table, but I didn't want to pull it out. Something told me Paul or Mark might be watching every move I made. The room felt like a cage. Then Mark stood up and walked over to the window. He leaned in close to the glass and slowly turned toward me with a look that sent a cold wave down my spine. It wasn't an outright threat, more like a warning, like he was silently telling me to stay in line. After that, Paul said it was time for Mark to go. Mark got up and left as suddenly as he appeared, slamming the door behind him. I thought the nightmare was over, but I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. Like I'd walked into some secret that I wasn't meant to see. The whole night left me on edge, my nerves raw. When I finally got home, I checked my phone and saw a bunch of missed calls and texts from an unknown number. It was Mark. The messages were strange, vague, almost like reminders or threats. I blocked the number immediately, but the whole thing stuck with me. The worst part, Hall's complete nonchalance about the whole situation. Like it was normal to have some creepy guy staring through his window at his dates. Like this was just part of his life. It made me wonder what else he'd been hiding, and whether anyone else had ever felt as uncomfortable or scared as I did that night. I've avoided dating apps for a while now, just because the memory of that night keeps creeping back in. The cold stare through the window of the uninvited guest, and the feeling that sometimes what seems normal on the surface is just the tip of something darker underneath. It started out normal enough. We matched, messaged for a bit, and decided to meet at this kind of hip, artsy bar downtown. You know, the kind with low lighting, weird paintings on the walls, and those tiny tables packed close together. Tina showed up looking sharp, definitely someone who knew how to dress. I remember thinking she had this intense vibe, like she was on the edge of something, but I shrugged it off. Sometimes people just give off that energy. We ordered drinks, and at first, things went pretty smoothly. We talked about stupid stuff, movies, music, whatever you chat about when you don't really know someone but want to fill the silence. She laughed a lot, but there was something in her eyes that made me a bit uneasy, like she was sizing me up or waiting for something. As the night went on, I started getting this weird feeling. Not the butterflies or nerves you get on a first date, but something darker. Like the atmosphere around her shifted, and I couldn't tell if it was just me being paranoid or if there was a real edge to her mood. The music got louder, the bar got busier, and at some point, I knew I wasn't into it. I was ready to call it quits. When I told her I wasn't interested in a second date, I thought she'd just brush it off or maybe look disappointed. But no, that's when everything changed. She stood up suddenly, and I remember hearing this sharp crack. One of the glasses on the table had smashed right into pieces. The noise was so loud it cut through the chatter in the bar, and all eyes turned to us. Tina didn't flinch or even seem upset like someone would if they'd broken something by accident. Nope, she picked up a jagged piece of the glass, the kind with a sharp, uneven edge, and started waving it around like it was nothing. Her smile was the worst part. It wasn't friendly or nervous. It was this crazy wide smile that made me feel like I'd just walked into a horror movie. The kind of smile you see on those characters who are way past the point of being sane. It wasn't threatening in the usual way, but it definitely screamed danger, like she was enjoying watching me freeze. People around us were starting to notice and move away. Some whispered, others just stared. I sat there in a heart pounding, trying to figure out if I should get up and bolt or say something. But honestly, I was too stunned. The bar that felt artsy and chilled just turned into this weird cage. She kept waving the glass, her eyes locked on mine, almost daring me to react. I couldn't even speak. My throat felt dry, and my mind was racing. I tried to calm down, telling myself maybe she wasn't actually going to do anything crazy. Maybe this was some weird way she expressed frustration or just a freak out over the rejection. But the vibe was different. The way she held that glass, the smile never left her face, and the way she stared, it was clear she wasn't joking around. The girl I thought was just having a drink with had suddenly become unpredictable, and I didn't know how to handle it. I looked around for help, but the bar was packed, and no one was coming close. Tina seemed to own the space around us. I tried to catch the bartender's eye, but he was busy with other customers. I was stuck, sitting there with a broken glass charred inches from me, unsure of what to do next. After what felt like forever, Tina finally put the glass down, but the smile never left. She just sat back down like nothing had happened, like it was all a game. I couldn't believe it. The whole scene was so messed up that I didn't even know how to react. I felt trapped in a moment where normal rules didn't apply. I grabbed my stuff and made a quiet exit soon after, avoiding looking back at her. On the walk home, my mind was spinning, trying to piece together what the hell just happened. How could a simple, "I'm not interested" lead to someone smashing glass and waving a knife-like shard at me with that kind of smile? The thing that freaked me out the most wasn't just the glass with a smile. It was how calmly she handled it. Like this wasn't the first time she pulled something like that. Like she was testing me, pushing boundaries, seeing how far she could go before I freaked out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every little noise felt like it was Tina coming back with that sharp glass in her hand. I kept replaying the date, trying to spot where things went wrong or if I missed signs. But honestly, it felt like she was a different person the moment I said no. I told a couple of friends what happened, and they were shocked. Some said it was a major red flag, others thought maybe I was overreacting. But I know what I felt. It was real, like I'd narrowly avoided something way worse. After that night, I blocked her on everything and never looked back. I've gone on plenty of weird dates, but nothing that made me feel genuinely unsafe so fast. I guess Tinder can bring out all kinds of people, and sometimes you get the ones you wish you never met. We matched, chatted a bit, and decided to meet up for drinks at this weird little bar tucked inside an old building downtown. The place was kind of dark and empty, with barely anyone around. He was nice enough, nothing crazy at first. We had some drinks, joked around, and when it came time to leave, he said he needed to grab something from his car. Seemed normal, right? He asked if I'd help him out, and I figured, sure, whatever, just a quick trip to his car. No big deal. So I followed him out of the bar into this hallway I hadn't noticed before. Then he led me down this narrow, kind of creepy stairwell that smelled like damp concrete and old pipes. He told me the parking garage was through here like it was no big deal. That's when the vibe shifted. I expected to step out into a parking lot or something open, but this stairwell kept going down and down, deeper than I thought it would. The lights were flickering, and the walls were covered in graffiti and peeling paint. It didn't feel like a way to a parking garage at all. It felt like a bunker or some forgotten basement. I started feeling uneasy, but he seemed calm, like this was totally normal, so I kept following. We finally got to the bottom, but instead of a parking garage, there was just this empty, cold hallway with no windows. It was silent except for our footsteps echoing. I glanced around, and it looked like a maze of concrete corridors stretching in all directions. He shrugged and said something about the garage being down one of those hallways, but honestly, his tone felt off, like he wasn't being honest. The whole situation was making my stomach twist. I wasn't about to freak out yet, but something about the place felt wrong. It was so quiet and isolated, and I could feel that old, itchy anxiety creeping in. We started walking down one corridor, then another. I tried to keep up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a bad idea. I was already regretting trusting him to take me here. The walls were bare, the air stale, and every turn looked the same. We were definitely not in a parking garage. No ramps, no cars, no open spaces. After what felt like forever, I asked where the hell we were, but he just said, "Almost there." His voice didn't sound convincing at all. It was like he was trying to keep me calm but failing. I felt a little trapped, like I was in one of those horror movies where the hero gets led into a place they can't escape. I looked around for an exit, any sign of daylight or an elevator, but there was nothing. Just endless concrete hallways and stairwells that seemed to loop back into each other. My heart was racing. I tried to keep my voice steady and asked again where the parking garage was, but he either ignored me or gave some vague answer. That's when I started panicking. This wasn't a grab something from the car situation anymore. This was a full-on maze, and I felt like I was losing control. I told myself to stay calm and just figure out a way back, but the whole place looked the same, and my phone had zero signal. I wasn't even sure if he was lost too, or if he was leading me deeper on purpose. I tried to backtrack, but the stairwell we came down was gone. It was like the building swallowed it up. Every time I thought we were heading towards an exit, we hit a dead end or another locked door. My mind was screaming at me to just get the hell out, but the guy was acting like nothing was wrong, which made me more suspicious. At one point I tried to pull away, but he blocked me and said something about needing help finding his car. That was the moment I realized I was stuck with someone who either didn't care about me or had some messed up plan. I wasn't sure what his deal was, but I didn't want to find out. I kept looking for any way to escape, any door that wasn't locked, any stairwell leading up. Finally, I spotted a faint light leaking under a door. I rushed over and tried the handle. It was unlocked. I slipped through, then found myself in a small, dusty storage room filled with old boxes and broken furniture. I didn't care. I just wanted out. I grabbed a phone charger off a table and tried calling someone, but still no signal. I texted a friend to come find me, hoping they'd get the message when I got back outside. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on the door in case he showed up. Luckily, after a few minutes, I heard footsteps coming down the hallway. I hid behind a shelf, heart pounding. The guy walked past the door and kept going the other way. I took my chance and slipped out, sprinting up the stairs and back through the corridors. After what felt like hours, I finally found an exit, a rusty metal door that led up to the street. I pushed it open and burst outside into the cold night air, gasping for breath. I didn't look back. I immediately blocked him on every app and number I had. I didn't want to have anything to do with him ever again. The whole thing was messed up, and I'm still not sure what his plan was, but I'm glad I got out. So, I matched with this girl, let's call her Jess. Her profile was pretty straightforward. Some casual pics, a few funny captions, nothing too flashy or intense. We chatted for a bit over the app, and she seemed chill enough, with a good sense of humor. After a few days of messaging, we agreed to meet up at this small bar downtown. It wasn't a crazy place, more of one of those hipster spots with dim lighting, weird plants hanging from the ceiling, and old vinyl records playing softly in the background. The kind of place where you expect to overhear some deep conversation or an indie band practicing upstairs. When Jess showed up, she looked pretty normal, just casual, jeans and a simple top, hair pulled back loosely. Nothing to raise any alarms. I was honestly looking forward to it, thinking it would be a nice, laid-back night out. I liked the vibe of the place. The music was chill, and the lighting made everything feel kind of cozy and intimate. We ordered drinks and sat down at a small table near the back. I wanted the cocktail, a sweet, fruity thing that the bartender recommended, while Jess ordered a beer. We started talking the usual stuff at first: jobs, music, Netflix shows we'd binged lately. Jess seemed funny and smart, and I was pretty into the conversation. There was nothing off at all, at least not until it happened. I was about halfway through my drink when I caught her doing something strange. It was subtle, like a quick motion, but I swear I saw her lean over and drop something tiny into my glass. I froze for a second, blinking hard to make sure I wasn't imagining things. There was this little white speck, maybe a pill or some crushed powder, settling at the bottom of my drink. And then, without missing a beat, Jess pushed the glass back toward me like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like dropping something into someone's drink on a first date was just casual. My stomach flipped, and a cold, heavy feeling started creeping in. I don't know if she thought I didn't see, or if she was testing me, but it was seriously creepy. For a moment, I just stared at the glass, trying to figure out what exactly she dropped in there. It was too small and white to be sure, but the moment was burned into my brain. I didn't want to react or accuse her right away. I'm not the kind of person who jumps to conclusions, but I was definitely not about to drink it. Jess kept chatting away, smiling like nothing weird had just happened. That was the worst part. Her calmness, like she expected me to just sip it without question. My mind was racing, trying to decide what to do. Could I pretend I didn't notice? Could I laugh it off as a joke? No way. I felt like I was trapped in some twisted movie scene where you suddenly realize you can't trust anyone, not even the person sitting across from you. I subtly pulled my glass away, looking around to see if anyone else had noticed. But the bar was quiet, people keeping to themselves, heads down or chatting softly in other corners. No one was paying attention. Jess kept talking, totally normal, and that just made the whole situation worse. The way she slid that glass back like it was nothing. It was like she was daring me. I figured maybe she was screwing with me to see if I was paying attention, like some sick prank. But what kind of person does that on a first date? I decided it was better not to risk it. I didn't drink anything else, just kept my glass pushed aside and waited. I flagged down the bartender and told her something was off with my drink, but she just gave me a confused look, said it looked fine to her. I didn't want to explain what I thought had happened, but believe me. It felt like one of those things you're embarrassed to even admit, so I just left it at that. From then on, everything felt off. The easy flow of the conversation broke down. I was tense, distracted, watching Jess more than I should have been. I kept trying to figure out if I should just leave or stick it out. Her face was hard to read. Was she crazy, dangerous, or just messing with me for fun? Why else would someone do that, right? I kept glancing at her, trying to see if I could catch any sign of guilt or remorse. But she just smiled that same strange smile, like she knew exactly what she'd done and was waiting to see how I'd react. Eventually, I told her I needed to use the bathroom. I needed to get away to clear my head. Once I was alone, I pulled out my phone and texted a friend, asking her to call me in a few minutes with an excuse so I could bail without it looking weird. I didn't want to walk out alone and have to deal with whatever was going on. When I came back, Jess was still sitting there, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. I grabbed my coat and said I had to get going. She smiled that same unsettling smile, and I swear it was like she was pleased, like this was some game to her, like she wanted to see if I'd drink that messed up cocktail or say something about it. I didn't. I left quick and without looking back. The whole way home, I kept thinking about what she'd put in my drink. Was it just a harmless prank, some weird social test, or something worse? I still don't know, and honestly, I don't want to. I haven't messaged her since. I blocked her on everything. And every time I think about that night, the way she dropped that little pill into my glass, her smile when I left, it makes my skin crawl. Like I narrowly escaped something bad. Dating is already a minefield, but that night made me realize how careful you really have to be. You never know who might be sitting across from you with something sinister hidden in their smile. I matched with this guy on Tinder, let's call him Mike. His profile was kind of vague, honestly. The job section just said unemployed, which immediately struck me as odd. I mean, maybe he was between jobs or taking some time off, but still, it felt like something was off. On the other hand, his photos were decent enough. A few shots of him hiking in the woods, some with friends at casual get-togethers. He looked normal enough, nothing flashy or overly polished, which made me think maybe he was just a regular dude. We started texting back and forth, nothing wild, just casual chats about music, weekend plans, and favorite shows. After a few days, Mike suggested meeting up in person. He picked this quiet coffee shop downtown, a place I hadn't been before, but liked the idea of. Small, low-key, not the usual noisy bar or crowded restaurant. I wasn't super pumped about the date, but I figured, why not? Worst case, I could leave early. When I arrived, the place was pretty empty, just a few other people scattered around, working on laptops or chatting softly. The vibe was cozy, with wooden tables, some exposed brick walls, and indie music playing low in the background. Mike was already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking relaxed in jeans and a gray hoodie. He smiled when he saw me, and for a second I felt like this might actually be all right. We started talking about the usual stuff. School, music, Netflix binges, and honestly, I was enjoying it more than I expected. Mike was easy to talk to, even if his answers were sometimes vague. Then, out of nowhere, things took a turn I wasn't ready for. Midway through our conversation, Mike suddenly reached under the table and pulled out a gun. I kid you not. He just casually slid it onto the table between us, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I froze completely. My heart started pounding so loud, I thought it might burst out of my chest. I stared at the gun, then back at Mike, trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. But no, his face was stone cold serious. He told me he was a cop, like an actual police officer. But here's the kicker. His Tinder bio said unemployed. That didn't add up. Why would a cop come to a coffee shop date with a loaded gun and just put it on the table like it was a casual accessory? It felt like some kind of power move or test. My brain was screaming that this wasn't normal, that something was very wrong. I tried to keep calm on the outside, but inside I was freaking out. The other people in the coffee shop didn't seem to notice what was happening, which made it even scarier. Was this something Mike did all the time? Was he dangerous? I didn't want to make a scene or be that person who freaked out, but I also didn't want to be stuck there with a gun in front of me. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to get out of the situation without making it worse. I noticed a door behind Mike, the exit, and I started thinking about how to make a quick escape without raising suspicion. Mike started talking again, this time about duty and protecting people, but his tone was off. It sounded forced, like he was trying too hard to convince either me or himself. The whole vibe shifted from casual date to some kind of twisted interrogation or power trip. It was chilling. I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for whatever he had planned next. So while he was distracted talking about honor and responsibility, I quietly grabbed my purse and slowly stood up. I made sure to be careful. No sudden movements, no knocking anything over. I told myself to keep my voice steady and not show panic, even though inside I wanted to run. I started walking toward the door, keeping my eyes low so he wouldn't notice. Mike was so caught up in his own monologue that he didn't even look up. I stepped outside into the fresh air, my heart still racing. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was blocks away, safe enough to pull out my phone and text a friend. I'm okay. Need to meet up somewhere safe. I blocked Mike on every app and social platform immediately after. The whole thing shook me. The gun on the table. The cop story that didn't match his bio. The way he acted like it was all normal. It screamed red flags from every angle. Thinking back, I still can't believe how fast things escalated. I thought I was just meeting someone for a quiet coffee date. Instead, I ended up in this surreal nightmare where a stranger pulled a gun out and just laid it between us like it was no big deal. It's terrifying how you can be sitting in a public place surrounded by people and still feel so vulnerable. That night changed the way I look at dating apps. It's scary how little you actually know about the person on the other side of the screen. You think you're just meeting someone new, but sometimes you're stepping into a situation that could turn dangerous in a second. So, if you're ever in a situation where something feels off, if someone pulls something unexpected like a gun or makes you uncomfortable in any way, trust your gut. Just get out. No conversation, no date, no drink is worth putting yourself at risk. Your safety is the only thing that matters. That's my creepy Tinder story. I never saw Mike again, and I hope I never will. But it's a reminder that even the simplest meetups can take a dark turn. Stay safe out there. I matched with this girl, let's call her Jess, who seemed pretty chill online. Her profile was something else, though. The photos, super polished, like model level stuff. You know the type. Perfect lighting, flawless skin, and poses that looked like they belonged in some high-end fashion magazine. It was like someone had hired a professional photographer just for her Tinder pics. She had this mysterious vibe in those photos too, a kind of allure that made you want to know more, but also kept you guessing. Her bio was casual and funny, nothing over the top, which balanced out the glamour of her photos. So yeah, I was definitely low-key excited to meet her in person. We messaged for a while, light banter, jokes here and there, nothing weird or creepy. She seemed cool and easygoing over text. Then she suggested we meet up at this small cafe in the artsy part of town. The place was kind of trendy, with exposed brick walls, those quirky old lamps hanging from the ceiling, and plants everywhere. Some real, some fake, but it all gave off this hipster vibe that I liked. It felt like a good spot for a first date. Low pressure, but still with some personality. I got there early and found a spot by the window. I ordered a coffee and sat waiting, watching people pass by on the street. The place wasn't crowded, just a handful of other people sipping lattes and tapping away on their laptops. Then she walked in. That's when things went sideways. She looked nothing like her pictures, nothing close. It was like the person I was looking at had stolen those photos off the internet and plastered them on a fake profile just to prank me. Her hair was wild. Definitely not that effortless I woke up like this look you see on Instagram, but more like she hadn't brushed it in days. Her clothes were mismatched and wrinkled, like they'd been through a tornado and come out the other side. The whole vibe she gave off was jittery and off, nervous, twitchy, like she was trying way too hard to act casual but failing miserably. At first, I told myself maybe the photos were old or heavily edited. People can look different in real life, right? So I didn't say anything and just tried to stay cool, hoping the night would get better. But as we started talking, the weirdness only grew. She kept scanning the room like she was waiting for someone, or maybe scared that someone was watching her. Her eyes darted everywhere except at me. Then she pulled out her phone and started texting nonstop. Not just quick replies either, like full-on conversations. And whenever I glanced over, she quickly hid the screen like she didn't want me to see. It felt like I wasn't the only person on her mind, and that realization made me uneasy. When it came time to order, she acted like she had no clue what a menu was. Like she stared at it for minutes, asking me questions like, what's an espresso? Or what's a latte? It was bizarre. No man I know was that clueless about coffee. I tried to laugh it off, but just felt like she was putting on some act. As the date dragged on, I kept hoping she'd open up or at least explain why she looked nothing like her photos. But instead, she got more nervous, more jittery. At one point, she dropped her phone, and as she bent down to pick it up, a bunch of messages popped up on the screen. I wasn't supposed to see them, but I caught glimpses of texts from someone calling her Jess and asking where she was. The way she looked at those messages, quick, scared like she was hiding a secret, made me realize something else. She probably wasn't Jess at all. I started wondering if maybe she had some mental health issues or was dealing with something serious. Or maybe it was something else entirely, a scam, a prank, or worse. The whole thing felt like a setup for something bad. I debated cutting the date short and walking out, but I was stuck. Something about the scene was messing with my head. Was I overreacting? Maybe she was just having a really bad day. But then she kept mentioning a friend who was supposed to meet us soon but never showed. It was like she was stalling or waiting for something or someone. Finally, I got bold. While she was distracted scrolling through her phone, I looked at it. I know that's sketchy, but I felt like I had to know what was going on. I found her real name in the contacts, and none of it matched what she'd told me. Then I tried Googling the pictures she'd sent before the date. That's when it hit me hard. The photos on her profile were stolen. They belonged to some random girl from another state, totally unrelated to her. I felt like a sucker. I'd been straight up catfished. I didn't say a word. Instead, I quietly left a couple bucks on the table for the coffee and walked out, my head spinning with a mix of confusion, anger, and relief. The whole walk back home felt heavy, like I just dodged a bullet, but also got hit with this weird emotional hangover. Later that night, I blocked her on every app and swore off dating apps for a while. It wasn't just that she looked nothing like her pics. It was the whole act, the fake identity, and how I'd been pulled into something that felt like a trap. Honestly, I still don't know what her deal was. Was she running some kind of scam, hiding from someone, or just trying to mess with people for fun? I'll probably never know. But it's crazy how easily people can put on a totally different face online and reel you in. You think you're meeting someone real, but it turns out you're just a character in their story. That night taught me a hard lesson about trust and appearances, and how messed up the internet can be when people hide behind fake profiles. I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling of staring at someone who was supposed to be this perfect person, only to realize it was all just a lie. And honestly, that's probably the scariest part of all. So yeah, that's my catfish horror story. Definitely one for the books. I'd matched with Mark, who seemed normal enough online. His profile was pretty straightforward, nothing flashy or dramatic. Just some decent photos, casual messages, and a bio that didn't scream, "Look at me." I liked that about him. It felt low-key and genuine, at least at first glance. He suggested we meet up at his place for a drink one evening, and I thought, okay, sounds easy enough. No pressure, just a chill hangout. When I got the address, I didn't recognize the neighborhood. It was on the edge of the city in a part I'd never really been to, kind of quiet, with a few older houses that looked like they'd been there forever, some clearly not cared for in years. It didn't feel dangerous exactly, but definitely unfamiliar. The house Mark told me was his was a pretty ordinary two-story, with a porch and a small garden out front. Nothing fancy, nothing out of place. When he opened the door and invited me in, I felt pretty comfortable. He seemed friendly and casual, like maybe this was just a regular night. We sat down in the living room, and the vibe was normal enough at first. The inside of the house was kind of generic, just a little messy, like someone who didn't really care about tidying up, but it wasn't gross or anything. I noticed a weird smell, though. It wasn't bad exactly, but it was stale, like old air mixed with something faintly chemical or maybe a strong cleaning product. I couldn't place it and tried to ignore it. Mark poured me a drink, and we started chatting. At first, the conversation was light: work, movies, music. But as time passed, something in the vibe started to shift. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something didn't add up. He dodged questions about his job, giving vague answers or quickly changing the topic. His eyes had this flicker, like he was nervous, maybe hiding something. And every few minutes, he'd glance at his phone like he was expecting a message or a call. I kept trying to tell myself to chill. Maybe he was just shy or anxious on a date. But my gut was nagging me harder with every passing minute. Then I noticed something on the kitchen counter, a little keycard with a company logo I didn't recognize. I asked about it, and he said it was from work, but he didn't elaborate and quickly steered the conversation away. I felt like my first real red flag, but I didn't want to make a scene or sound paranoid, so I let it slide. Later, when I had to use the bathroom, I asked if there was Wi-Fi so I could check something quickly. That's when I saw the network name on his phone. It wasn't anything normal or cozy sounding like Mark's Wi-Fi or home network. Instead, it was this random string of letters and numbers that made no sense, like a code or an ID. That made me even more suspicious. I left that night with an uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. Something was wrong, and I needed to know what. So I started digging online. I looked up the address and quickly realized it wasn't even his place. The house was listed on Airbnb, but under a completely different name. None of the details Mark had given me matched the real listing I found online. That's when it all started to get really creepy. I contacted the Airbnb host, pretending to be a potential renter just to ask a few questions about the house. The host was friendly, but mentioned that the property had been rented recently under a different name than the one Mark gave me. They also mentioned that for security reasons, the house had several cameras around the property, including one pointed right at the front door and porch area. Here's the kicker: my face was on the security footage. I nearly dropped my phone. The host told me they were reviewing footage after reports of suspicious activity, and had been recorded the entire time I was there. It felt like such a violation. I thought I was at his home, somewhere private, but instead, I'd been unknowingly on camera the whole time, like some kind of experiment or trap. I couldn't stop thinking about what else might have been recorded. Was someone else watching? Was this some twisted game? Or worse, was the footage being shared somewhere? That night, I was so shaken I could barely focus. I replayed every moment in my head. The stale smell, the weird Wi-Fi name, his vague answers, the keycard, and finally the cameras. It was like being caught in a puzzle where none of the pieces fit together. I never contacted Mark again. I blocked him on every app and number. The whole experience made me feel so exposed and small, like I was just a pawn in someone's twisted setup. It wasn't just that he lied about where he lived. It was the whole facade, the careful planning to make me think this was his safe private space when really it was somewhere rented just to watch me without my knowledge. I can't stop wondering how many other people he's done this to. How many women thought they were meeting a guy at his place but were really stepping into a secret surveillance zone. And that neighborhood? It's packed with Airbnb rentals, a perfect cover for someone to pull off something like this without raising alarms. Months have passed, but sometimes random memories hit me, like what if I'd stayed longer, or what if I'd gone upstairs? What if something worse had happened while I was there? The idea that my face is on some security footage somewhere, without me knowing what happens to it, still freaks me out. I'm honestly just grateful I got out when I did, but the whole thing feels like a bad horror movie, except it wasn't fiction, it was real, and I was the unwitting main character. So yeah, that's the story of the night I found out the place I went to wasn't his at all, and how I ended up unknowingly caught on secret cameras at an Airbnb booked under a fake name. Definitely not the kind of first date story you want to tell, but it's mine. We met at this little restaurant, nothing fancy but kind of cozy. I wasn't expecting much, just some light conversation, maybe some laughs, and then calling it a night. She seemed cool enough, easy to talk to, and I guess I was just happy someone wanted to hang out. After a few minutes, she mentioned her roommate was just dropping her off and would head right out. I didn't think much of it, figured it was normal for someone to be a little cautious about late night plans. But then, out of nowhere, this other girl shows up. Same age, casual vibe, but way quieter and kind of intense. At first, I thought maybe she was just saying hi and about to leave, but nope, she pulled up a chair right at our table like she was invited to the party. The way she sat down with no hesitation made me feel a little weird, but I didn't say anything. I thought maybe my date hadn't told me everything or something. Things started getting strange fast. The roommate ordered her own food, just like she was crashing my date, and then she started asking questions. Not the usual, so what do you do stuff. No, it was way more detailed and kinda invasive. She wanted to know my job, sure, but then she kept digging, asking about my work hours, how often I'm home alone, if I live by myself, stuff like that. The way she was looking at me felt off, like she wasn't just curious, she was studying me. At this point, I was already getting a bad feeling, but I tried to keep it cool. My date was just sitting there like nothing was happening, smiling like it was totally normal for her roommate to crash the date and interrogate me. That was honestly the weirdest part. It felt like they had some silent agreement going on that I wasn't a part of. The roommate kept pressing, and I could tell my answers were making her more interested. It wasn't casual chit-chat anymore. She was zeroing in on my schedule when I leave the house, if anyone else is around. I felt like I was being mapped out or something, and it freaked me out hard. I kept thinking, why would she want all this info? And why was my date just sitting there acting like it was no big deal? The restaurant started to feel smaller, like the walls were closing in. The other people at nearby tables didn't seem to notice, but I was way too tense to ignore what was happening right in front of me. The roommate's eyes were cold, focused, and there was this weird, quiet confidence about her that made me want to just get up and run. I tried to keep the conversation light, hoping to steer it away, but she wasn't having it. She was smart about it too, always slipping in the questions casually like it was normal stuff. Every time I answered, she made a little note of it in her head, like she was piecing together a puzzle. I kept sneaking glances at my date, trying to figure out what was going on between them. They exchanged these tiny looks, smiles that felt like they were in on a joke I wasn't allowed to get. By now, I was almost done with my food and wanted to leave. I felt trapped. The more I thought about it, the more I realized maybe they had been planning this all along. Like my date had invited me out just to bring me to her roommate for some reason, and that reason was definitely not friendly. I was stuck between trying to be polite and wanting to bolt. Eventually, I managed to say I needed to get going, but the roommate suddenly jumped in like she wasn't done with me yet. She asked when I worked next if I'd be home and if I'd be alone. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just some awkward hanging out situation. This was something else entirely. I didn't want to freak out right there in the restaurant, so I nodded along and quickly finished my drink. As soon as I could, I told my date I was heading out, saying something about an early morning. My date smiled that same unsettling smile, but didn't say no. The roommate gave me a look that made my skin crawl, like she was warning me or maybe daring me to disappear. When I walked out, I kept checking behind me. They both stayed inside, watching me go. I didn't stick around to see if they followed or anything. I just wanted to get as far away as possible. On the way home, I kept thinking about how easily they both slipped into this weird team thing, like they had done this before or were used to pulling people in. After that night, I blocked both of them on Tinder and everywhere else. I didn't want to mess around with whatever game they were playing. It wasn't just about a bad date anymore. It felt like I'd walked into something I wasn't supposed to see, something planned and calculated. Sometimes I still wonder if they ever try this on other people. The way the roommate just slid in like she belonged there, the way she asked those questions so casually but so deliberately, it stuck with me. I never figured out why they wanted to know if I was home alone or what I did for work, but it felt like they were checking if I was vulnerable or easy to track. Honestly, it's one of those stories you don't tell your friends because it sounds too weird, but it's true. That night with the roommate who wouldn't leave and started digging into my life was hands down one of the creepiest things I've experienced from a Tinder date. No crazy twists or violence, just pure unsettling vibes that make you want to delete every dating app forever.